Lisa Broom with the Thursday, August 6th edition of the CBC Evening News. In our top story tonight, a fresh dispute brewing over the importation of chicken, and it's prompting a reaction from local poultry producers.
The situation is leaving a bad taste in the mouths of local poultry producers. Raising the issue, President of the Barbados Egg and Poultry Producers Association, Carlisle Brathwaite. He says a request was made by a local food retailer last Friday for the importation of a container of chicken.
It is supposed to come in on the 160232, paying 102% duty on it. But the remarkable thing about it is the person can find, or persons, I shouldn't even say person because it's persons, it can be, the persons can find enough money to buy chicken from overseas cash, but they will not find enough money to pay their suppliers here in the country, and they expect me to be able to sanction such a thing. No, I will not. I will not sanction it. It cannot happen under my reign without me making a noise about it. I will stampede about it.
He calls the move a slap in the face of poultry producers.
First, pay your suppliers, local suppliers. They will supply you. They have custom giving you credit. You have this big set of credit. Give the people the money. How can you find money to pay and buy things from overseas and support the bigger countries, their economy, and our economy is devastated at the time? Can't work.
Mr. Brathwaite contends that there's adequate supply of poultry on the island to meet the demand of both consumers and retailers. Shane Seeley, CBC News.
When contacted, Chief Executive Officer of the BADMC, Sean Tudor, declined comment on the matter. The search for popular talk show contributor and agriculturalist Vincent Lane of Farm Road, St. Philip, has ended on a sad note. Police Public Relations Officer, Acting Assistant Superintendent David Welch broke the news that Lane's body was found in his car this morning at Bushy Park. According to police, Lane left home between 8 and 8:30 in his car, a 2004 Mercedes-Benz, yesterday morning and hadn't been seen since. They raised the alarm early this morning, but by 10 o'clock, they reported that the farmer, engineer and inventor's body had been found in his car in a cart road near the Bushy Park Cemetery. CBC visited the Lane residence at Farm Road, St. Philip, and found a very heavy atmosphere. The over 20 family and friends who gathered at the house were too distressed to speak to CBC. They were there to offer support and comfort to Lane's wife, Sandra. It's the second time tragedy of that sort hit the family. The Lane's two sons, Kirk and Neil, both died in a drowning accident on the family's property about 20 years ago. In their memory, Lane named his farm Neil Kirk Farms. Only in March this year, he talked to CBC News about a new irrigation system that he designed to help mass-produce various types of crops. Only one bus has been damaged by the fire that broke out earlier today at the Mangrove Bus Depot in St. Philip, but it's one that has not been in use for quite a while. Corporate Communications Manager Linda Holder told CBC News the bus was extensively damaged, but due to the quick response of the Barbados Fire Service, the fire was successfully controlled.
At no time at all would it have affected our active fleet. The bus was thoroughly burnt. The fire service came on the site and they were able to control the spread of the fire to make sure it did not affect any other buses. The police were also here and the roving team, and we do want to thank them for their quick response.
The damage was caused by a grass fire around the perimeter of the transport board. Ms. Holder says the fire service has taken measures to prevent any further damage to the board's fleet of buses or its perimeter.
We have engaged the fire service, and what they did was they assisted us in clearing some of the area that was closer to the fence, and that should be able to address that particular situation at this time, because we have gone out of our dry season and we're now into the wet season, so you shouldn't have the opportunity for any fire to spread like that one did this morning.
The $50 million expansion of Berth 5 at the Bridgetown Port will soon be completed. While updating reporters on the progress, Manager of Operations Ian Stewart expects the work will be finished by the end of October. He says some of the challenges with handling cruise and cargo vessels simultaneously will be reduced. Mr. Stewart adds another gantry crane along with 5 straddle cars will be added at the port.
We have about 75% of that pile work complete, and boulders is also being placed on the seabed around the base of the piles to give support. So following on from here, we are now putting in things like the beam work, fender beams, and a lot of the infrastructure for the support of the quay as it goes out the 75 meters.
As Barbados anticipates increases in cruise arrivals, an appeal is being made for taxi operators to work together. Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Senator Irene Sandiford Garner, says the existing cooperatives need to be more effective. She says this will be a critical requirement if owners expect to benefit from the influx of business when 2 more cruise ships home port here at the end of the year.
They already have their organizations, from what I understand, they've had the co-op associations and so on. The port has had its associations, but for some reason, they're not working. They need to constitute themselves to work. They need to ensure that the organizations which are already established work in the interest of the members, have their meetings, have their officers, and make sure that their vehicles are in a condition that they can work, and look to garner some of the business that will be coming.
Senator Sandiford Garner also revealed that some car rental businesses have been stretched after seeing an increased demand for vehicles during the crop over season.
We just had crop over, and there are 2 local car companies, Courtesy and I think it's Stouts Car Rentals, which did not have enough hired cars for the traffic that we would have had just for crop over. You're now thinking and looking at the end of the year numbers in cruise passenger arrivals, where you will need to be moving guests from one point to another point, and they can only benefit from this increased business or derive or garner returns from this business if they are organized.
Watching military movies might be exciting to some, but experiencing war firsthand is definitely a different story. Now, this next story is about 27-year-old Corey Marshall, a retired Barbadian U.S. soldier who's back home after spending 7.5 years in trouble spots like Iraq and Afghanistan. Ryan Broom has more.
He was blown up at least 5 times while in a vehicle during his 2 years fighting war in Iraq and Afghanistan. According to Corey Marshall, 1 day of war felt like 1,000,000 years. He says what you see in the movies is what actually happens. The retired soldier says most of his friends were shot down right before his eyes. But Mr. Marshall is thankful to be alive.
It wasn't too much of a frightening experience because it happened so quick. I woke up in the hospital after being knocked unconscious for a while. It was a good transition back, even though with me almost dying, being knocked unconscious and stuff like that. I just got through it with God.
Back in 2011, Mr. Marshall's colonel gave him a military Purple Heart for displaying bravery in the war. Due to a back injury, he was forced to retire since he could no longer carry military equipment on his shoulders. But nevertheless, the former soldier is delighted to now be home in Barbados. He left the island since he was 2 years old, and it's his first time returning home since then.
I'm loving it. It's the first time since I've been here, since I left at 2, and it feels amazing being welcomed. Every person I tell this is my first time back, they welcome me with open arms, and it feels great. Think about living out here.
And Corey Marshall says the local food is great, but he especially loves chafet rotis. Sadly though, Corey will be leaving the island on Friday. Ryan Broom, CBC News.
We'll have more news in just a moment, but first we want to get your take on this question. Do you believe Barbados should be importing any chicken meat? Text yes or no to short code 8111. We'll have the results at the end of the news.
Dear Clark, I've made a fascinating discovery, the institutional water cooler. Its gravitational pull sucks people from their workstations at the busiest times of day to stand around it and chat about emerging global trends like, will pink be in fashion next season? Meanwhile, the world slows to a stop as it waits in line to be served. I don't see that trend at Globe Finance.
Globe Finance. Think outside the bank.
When it comes to their financial service, slow is out, swift is in.
Sharing everything is our style. No camera can capture our magic. But when a cold hits, my head is somewhere else. I need that cold out. And life back in.
When a cold keeps you away, reach for Panadol Multi-Symptoms. Clinically proven ingredients for a total response to help clear your physical symptoms.
So I can be fully there for them.
Panadol Multi-Symptoms. When the cold is gone, life takes its place.
Beat the heat with a cold Bico treat. Bond products from Bico are now at super low prices. Indulge yourself with real fruit bar flavors in the new chocolate fudge bar, just $1.50, and the nutty choco nut bar, now only $2. Offer available for a limited time only from participating retail outlets, Bico Mobilers and Bico Direct Outlet at Harbour Road.
Finance Minister Chris Sinclair is responding to claims he had no right chairing talks concerning the impasse between the Customs Department and the Barbados Revenue Authority. He was responding directly to comments made by General Secretary of the Unity Workers Union, Caswell Franklin, who refused to attend yesterday's meeting with the minister at government headquarters. The meeting was instead attended by top officials of the National Union of Public Workers and the Barbados Workers Union. Mr. Franklin claimed it would be unconstitutional for the minister to guarantee any appointments to the public service, which he says is the main grievance for customs officers. Instead, he says the Ministry of the Civil Service is the only body that can discuss conditions of service for government employees. Now, although Mr. Sinclair believes Mr. Franklin's absence from the meeting was unfortunate, he maintained it was not the union leader's place to dictate the minister's decisions.
Mr. Franklin doesn't determine which meetings I'm going to be present at, or I can't be present at. That's not his role, and if he prefers to take a different track, you know, my thing here is not to negotiate. I am not a negotiator. That's a technical thing for the technical staff to deal with. I am here as a facilitator. I am satisfied that my presence, for whatever little it is worth, has been able to move this process along.
The finance minister says his statement about the matter did not come from an adversarial position. Instead, he's concerned about the issues resulting from the current impasse and says his interest in the matter is ensuring the progress of Barbadian society.
My interest is the interest of Barbados and ensuring that we get what we need to get done to have our revenue authority fully functional with all the departments that are necessary to be under it, to ensure that the national interests of Barbados are protected, that our economy continues to function.
2 men charged with one of the incidents that happened on Kadooment Day have been remanded to prison. 33-year-old Ryan Andre Smith and 40-year-old Jose MacDonald Bell, both of Story Gap, Codrington Hill, St. Michael, are jointly charged with wounding with intent in relation to the wounding of Arnold Atwell about 3:30 p.m. on Blackrock Main Road. Police say Atwell was on Blackrock Main Road on Kadooment Day when he was accosted and wounded by a number of men, including Smith and Bell. Police close by responded and detained the men along with their weapons. Atwell was taken to the QEH by ambulance and treated for 2 stab wounds to his back and was detained with a partial collapsed right lung. Smith and Bell pleaded not guilty and will return to court on August 13th. A St. Thomas man has been remanded to prison on drugs charges stemming from a drug bust dating back to 2012. 51-year-old Gregory Rudolph Grandison from Prout will appear at the District D Magistrates Court on September 8th after facing the courts yesterday for possession, intent to supply and trafficking of cannabis. Grandison, a steel bender, was only arrested on the 1st of this month in relation to an offence committed 3 years ago. At the time, a motor car, registration number MJ106, was seen at Prout around 5 in the afternoon and intercepted. Police say 2 occupants were in the vehicle, including Grandison, who escaped. 7 pounds of cannabis were reportedly discovered during a search of the vehicle. The other occupant was arrested and charged with drug-related offences. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Maxine McLean, has stressed to the United Nations Security Council the grave threat posed to Barbados and the rest of the Caribbean by the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons. Speaking during the open debate on peace and security challenges facing small island developing states, Senator McLean stated the government of Barbados continue to oppose the proliferation of nuclear, biological and chemical weapons. Senator McLean says the situation was made worse by the many vulnerabilities which commonly characterized SIDS. These include narrow resource bases, small domestic markets, susceptibility to external shocks and environmental vulnerability. The foreign minister told the UN these threats to peace and security have required limited resources being diverted at significant cost to national development. Well, still to come, we'll look at some of the stories making headlines across the region. But first, a reminder